Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're not just reviewing a report. This is more like an urgent investigation. We're looking at a digital mistake, a huge security lapse that just ripped the curtain back on one of the most protected criminal cases in recent history.
We're talking about the accidental release of Volume 8 of the Jeffrey Epstein case files.
Right. And this deep dive is built entirely around that accident. You've all seen the 7 volumes that were officially released.
But Volume 8 was different. It was never officially indexed, never meant to see the light of day, and it slipped out.
And it contains evidence that, frankly, completely upends the official government narrative we've been fed for years.
It really does.
So let's remind everyone what that narrative was. For years, the story was always very narrow, very contained.
The official line was, Jeffrey Epstein? Yes. Terrible crimes. And Ghislaine Maxwell, the one and only necessary co-conspirator.
End of story. 2 people. An isolated operation.
That whole narrative is now in direct conflict with the government's own internal documents. The undeniable revelation in Volume 8 is a series of FBI communications from 2019.
And what do they show?
They show that authorities weren't just looking at Epstein and Maxwell. They were actively investigating a vast network of co-conspirators. The official story is functionally impossible when you read this.
So this isn't about theories anymore. We're literally holding the government's own internal paper trail, their own admission that this thing was massive.
And yet they systematically just dropped the pursuit of everyone involved, except Maxwell.
Which raises the big question, why? And, for whom?
That is the central question this deep dive has to try and answer.
Okay, so let's start with how this stuff even got out. It's almost absurd. Volume 8 wasn't meant for us to see.
Not at all. It wasn't indexed with the other 7 volumes. It was just there.
Yeah.
Accessible if you knew the right URL.
A digital backdoor left open.
Exactly. And some savvy people figured it out pretty quickly. They grabbed the zip file before the agencies, the DOJ, the U.S. Attorney's offices, could scrub it or hide it properly.
Just a pure operational accident.
A huge one. And exposed files they had very intentionally tried to shield from public view, even though the law required transparency.
So what did this accident actually reveal about the scale of the whole thing?
It revealed that the official investigation was supposed to be huge. The real bombshell here is an internal FBI email from 2019.
Right.
It explicitly discusses at least 10 uncharged co-conspirators that the investigation was targeting. These were just vague figures. They were named individuals.
10 people the FBI had identified, while the public was being told for years that there was no evidence of anyone else being involved.
It's a massive gap between what they were saying and what they were doing.
And the context of this email is important, right? Where did it come from?
Oh, absolutely. It's vital. This communication came from the FBI's Violent Crime Section, specifically the Crimes Against Human Trafficking Unit.
The Human Trafficking Unit?
Yes. That specialization alone confirms this was a high-priority organized crime investigation. They were looking at systemic trafficking, not just isolated assault charges.
So the involvement of that specific unit just completely undercuts the denials we've heard from, former officials and others.
It shatters the claim there was no evidence Epstein was trafficking victims to others. If the Human Trafficking Unit is talking about 10 specific co-conspirators, they were tracking a network of recipients.
It just blows the lid off the whole small-scale operation myth.
It does. And the emails show they had actionable leads. They talk about trying to make contact with these individuals in New York City and elsewhere, so we're talking a national, maybe even international scope.
They were trying to follow up on quite a bit of information.
And yet, we all know what happened.
Nothing. Despite having 10 targets back in 2019, those leads just vanished. Maxwell got prosecuted, and the file was essentially closed.
Exactly. The investigation the DOJ internally promised was, moving forward, just hit a wall. It went into a deep freeze right when it should have been expanding.
So this brings us to transparency. Or, I guess, the complete lack of it.
A deliberate attempt to subvert it, really. The whole reason we have any of these documents is because of the Epstein Files Transparency Act.
And that law is very specific, isn't it?
Very. It was designed to prevent exactly this kind of cover-up. The law strictly prohibits redactions for things like embarrassment, reputational harm, or political sensitivity.
The only legal reason to redact is to protect victims or minors, period.
But Volume 8 just blatantly shows them using illegal redactions to shield powerful adults, the alleged co-conspirators.
And we know this because of the context of the emails.
The proof is right there in the structure. You see these documents discussing attempts to locate perpetrators, and the names are just blacked out. There's an email with the subject line, co-conspirators at the top.
Read us the quote that really illustrates this.
Okay, so the document says, blank does not need to head out. We made contact with blank last night in New York City. Blank last night in New York. Contact was made with blank, blank, and blank.
The grammar itself proves these aren't victims. Victims are not co-conspirators at the top.
And they aren't being tracked by the FBI for follow-up in New York City. These are alleged perpetrators being actively protected by illegal redaction. It's a direct violation of the law.
It's the definition of a cover-up. They're not denying the evidence exists. They're just using black ink to erase the identities of people their own agents said were central to the crime.
And even with all that censorship, a few big names slip through. One example refers to an investigation in Ohio. The line reads, I do not know about Ohio contacting Wexner.
Wow. That's unmistakable. That's Les Wexner, the former CEO of Victoria's Secret.
Correct. The sources confirm the FBI suspected the wealthy businessman in Ohio. His name appearing here just proves the people they were chasing were individuals of immense wealth and power.
And we also saw Jean-Luc Brunel's name, the deceased modeling agent.
Yes, he's named right alongside a redacted blank. Attempts were made to blank and Brunel. These names ground the investigation in the worlds of global business and modeling.
So this wasn't just some brief, abandoned idea. The DOJ itself was confirming this conspiracy was real.
Absolutely. As early as 2020. There's a transcript from the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, the SDNY, the main prosecutors.
The federal prosecutors in charge of the case, what did they say?
They stated, and I'm quoting, "The original charges against Jeffrey Epstein contained a conspiracy charge, and we allege that there were conspirators involved. Jeffrey Epstein couldn't have done what he did without the assistance of others."
That is just a staggering admission.
And they went on to assure the public that the investigation into those other people was moving.
So they admit a conspiracy exists, they say they're on it, and now we know they had a list of 10 names since 2019, but the prosecution just stops dead after Maxwell.
It shows they were prosecuting one person while internally protecting at least 10 others.
And their intent was even in the legal paperwork, right? The search warrant.
It was. The search warrant from the SDNY demanded the seizing of evidence concerning the identity or location of co-conspirators of Jeffrey Epstein, including blank and Ghislaine Maxwell.
The intent couldn't be clearer.
It was backed by a federal warrant, but the case just died.
So what does this all mean? It means the investigation, which had evidence, warrants, and internal admissions, it just hit a political brick wall.
No question. It was shut down because of who the targets were, not because of a lack of evidence.
Okay, let's pivot, because this is where the evidence collides with the highest levels of U.S. politics. The travel logs and the reactions from certain figures are really something.
Yeah, this is where it gets very interesting. Volume 8 had a specific note from a U.S. attorney from 2020. It detailed Donald Trump's travel on Epstein's private jet. The note says Trump traveled many more times than previously has been reported, and that this travel happened during the time period relevant to the Maxwell prosecution.
The frequency is one thing, but there was a specific detail about the passengers, right?
Yes, and this is crucial. The U.S. attorney noted that on 2 of those flights, 2 of the passengers were women who would be possible witnesses in a Maxwell case.
So a prosecutor, in an internal note, is actively connecting Trump's travel to the criminal case against Epstein's main accomplice.
It means that, to the authorities, this connection was criminally relevant.
Now, you have to contrast that, the FBI looking at his flight logs, with Donald Trump's public statements about the files being released?
Right. His public focus was always about deflection. He often talked about his concern for innocent people, and he specifically mentioned lawyers and bankers who might have innocently met Jeffrey Epstein years ago.
So his focus is entirely on protecting powerful professional associates.
Not on prosecuting the 10 co-conspirators his own FBI was tracking. He's prioritizing the professional inconvenience of the wealthy over justice for the victims.
That defensive posture is so specific, and it stands in stark contrast to the surprising response from Bill Clinton.
It really does. I mean, given all the scrutiny around his own travel on Epstein's jet, you'd expect a similar kind of caution.
But instead, we get this huge plot twist.
Right. Despite all the political risk, Bill Clinton issues a public statement that just says, release the entirety of the files.
It's an almost aggressive challenge to the Justice Department.
It's fascinating. You have Trump worried about the reputations of innocent, powerful people, and Clinton is basically daring the authorities to explain what they're hiding.
Whether it's a political gambit or a genuine call for transparency, it is a fundamentally different reaction.
It creates this incredible political pressure. The DOJ is caught illegally redacting names, and now they're being challenged by the very figures who are also implicated in these travel logs.
Okay, so let's just summarize the incredible impact of this accidental leak. We have proof of what looks a lot like a cover-up.
We have the accidental nature of the leak itself, the undeniable proof of 10 co-conspirators known to the human trafficking unit since 2019.
And the illegal redaction of non-victim names, powerful people like Les Wexner.
This deep dive just confirms the official story was a lie of omission. It shows the highest levels of power were actively suppressing the full scope of these crimes. They were protecting people at the highest level of power in this country.
This isn't just a theory anymore. This is from internal FBI and SDNY paperwork.
And it details a conspiracy that was then deliberately whitewashed. It tells you everything about who they were afraid of naming.
The pressure on the DOJ to drop those 10 leads must have been immense.
Absolutely. Look, the government itself admitted this operation couldn't have been done alone. They had search warrants targeting co-conspirators, but the official narrative says Maxwell was the last one.
So what is that continued protection, the illegal redactions, the abandoned investigation? What does that tell you about the power of the people they were shielding?
It tells you everything. The documents are out there, thanks to a mistake, but the justice is still trapped behind all that black ink.